Hello and welcome to Who is Best, a show that I have hosted for 3 years now. I told myself that once I hit 10,000 subs that I would get a Patreon together, but I wanted to make it worth your time to support me with your loose change. So, I've added all of my videos from my previous anime channel that was taken down. It's available to all Patreon members. On top of that, if you pledge $5 or more per month, I'll send you copies of both my novels, The Immortal Cure and The Sky King. If you like what I'm doing here and want to just continue to support me as best you can, the Patreon method is going to be one of the better ones to help. And don't forget that I will be shouting out the Patreon members at the end of every video. Anyway, let's get on with it. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was an amalgamation of all the prior games, taking features of every title and combining them into the most polished Xeno game to date. One of the key features of this title was mixing the class-based system of Xenoblade Chronicles X and the gacha hero system of Xenoblade 2, creating what essentially becomes a job system. The 6 main characters of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 can learn up to 25 jobs, each coming with arts, skills, master arts, and individual stats. Now, the Xeno games have never been accused of being simple. These games are a data miner's dream as new game-breaking strats are constantly discovered. With that being said, I feel that I have taken in all considerations in building this list. A few key considerations are these. 1. If a class provides skills and abilities that are important for game-breaking team builds but isn't useful by itself, it will still land high on this list. 2. The debuffing mechanic is possibly one of the worst gimmicks in the game, and any class built around it will land low on this list. 3. I'm considering an entire playthrough with an emphasis on endgame. Post-game will be considered, but it won't be as heavy as the endgame. Finally, team synergy plays a huge role into list placement, though I won't be calling out the exact synergies that make jobs game-breaking, but the more dependent class is on other classes, the lower it will appear on this list. And don't forget to stick around till the end for a bonus list. We'll start with the tier. The worst class in the game is the attacker class, the Stalker. The Stalker dishes out some of the worst damage. The art synergy is terrible and works against each other. On top of all this, the Stalker is highly debuff dependent, making it one of the worst choices for your team. Next is Tyon's starting class, the Tactician. Again, this healer support class is highly dependent on debuffs, making it a terrible choice even in the early game. The final member of the tier is the Machine Assassin. Similar to the Stalker, the Machine Assassin is built completely around debuffing enemies. Though, of the 3 classes we talked about so far, the Machine Assassin does it the best, making it the top of the tier. The low tier. Guardian Commander is the single worst tank in the game, but a decent support unit. It has a depressingly low crit rate, and in order to keep aggro, it needs to be player controlled. The main gimmick of this class is its awakening skill. If used right, it can be useful, but if put in as the main tank, you'll find the Guardian Commander has a tough time carrying the team. Next on the low tier is another tank, the Heavy Guard. This is Land's starting class and has some of the worst AI in the game. If controlled, the early access to topple is nice, and can carry you through until you unlock better tanks. The final member of the low tier is the Thaumaturge. The Thaumaturge is a terrible healer DPS hybrid unit that just so happens to come with the single best skill in the game, Ultimate Qigong. Ultimate Qigong ignores 40% of enemy defense and is flatly applied to any physical class. This skill alone makes physical classes overall better than ether-based classes. Alright, as is the case with many large lists, we're going to break up the mid-tier into 2 tiers, so let's begin with the lower mid-tier. First up is the Martial Artist. This DPS has a high and fairly easily attainable damage multiplier. Hitting the multiplier cap early is the main feature of the Martial Artist, but it also comes with its own issues as not pulling aggro is very difficult. That being said, Reagan Force is incredibly strong, making the Martial Artist your average DPS. And speaking of average DPS, the Full Metal Jaguar is one of the best early and mid-game ether-based attackers, up until you hit the late game. The Full Metal Jaguar almost beats everyone else in damage. Once enemies are able to dodge even a single attack though, this class drops in relevance big time as damage is based on accuracy. The Lost Vanguard is the opposite of the Full Metal Jaguar, picking up speed towards the end of the game but struggling in the mid-game. The Lost Vanguard is really only able to keep aggro via its smash skill, though being an Agnes class, it has access to the best tank arts, so that can be corrected. As you reach endgame enemies, evasion tanks take a hit, and blocking tanks like the Lost Vanguard pick up speed, making it a mid-tier tank. The final member of the lower mid-tier is the Yumsmith. The Yumsmith is an interesting class, which excels at building the chain attack meter. On top of this, the Yumsmith provides one of the second best breaking arts in the game, which is pivotal for the best breakers in the game. The problem with this class is its low DPS and its slight dependence on debuffing enemies. In the post-game, the Yumsmith can be built to rival breakers like the Nopon Champion and Ogre classes. The upper mid-tier. The Strategos is a high damaging healer which benefits from the skills of the Signifer. It can give counter heal and even buff attacks, making it a highly effective support, DPS, and healer hybrid. The Noponic Champion is, well, it's a class that exists. Its build is terrible as its skills and abilities conflict with each other, and its gimmick applies only to the user of the class and cannot be carried party-wide. Now, Noponic Champion does have the single best break art in the game, and with the right build can rival a class like the Ogre, so it ended up here on the mid-tier. The Medic Gunner is Uni's starting class. It has a great attack buff and above average healing abilities. Mixed with the Signifer and Incursor's arts and skills, this class can become top tier, but mainly towards the endgame and postgame. Overall, you can't go wrong with Medic Gunner. Next is the Life Sage. The Life Sage is a post-game only healing class, so it's very limited in use. On top of this, Signifer, Troubadour, and Lapidaris would beat it out even if you could use it in the main storyline. The War Medic is one of the best straight-up healers in the game. Taking advantage of Signifer's arts, the War Medic becomes an optimal buffer as well. Oh, and don't forget its debuff immunity. Aside from the obvious game-breaking classes, the War Medic will be a mainstay in your party for the majority of your playthrough. The Zephyr is the best tank in the game. Sure, you can make an argument that the Super Boss's accuracy makes it less than ideal tank, but the majority of the early, mid, late, and post-game, you're going to be hard-pressed to find anything that can beat it. Now, the major caveat here is that to truly get your money's worth out of the Zephyr, it needs to be the class of the controlled player. But its AI is still passable, so it's landed here on the upper mid-tier. The final member of the upper mid-tier is the Flash Fencer. Flash Fencer isn't a class you'll be using after the mid-game, but there isn't a single team strategy that won't use its absolutely broken art set. Cross Impact alone is used in combinations with the Signifer to make the most busted setup possible. Because of this, the Flash Fencer makes it to the top of the mid-tier. The top tier. The Royal Summoner is another post-game exclusive DPS class. The Royal Summoner has the best damage multiplier in the game and an incredible master art. On the downside, it's ether-based and is pretty squishy if it takes aggro, but it's still effective enough that it belongs on the top tier. The Seraph is an incredibly risky glass cannon, but if capable of living, the Seraph's damage is mind-boggling at times. In fact, it can dish out the most damage in the game with the right equipment and skills. Now, that damage is situational, which makes it less effective than the Swordfighter or Incursor. But with a topple art and chain attack potential, this class ends up as one of the best DPS classes in the game. The Lapidaris is the ultimate healer, and if built right, can keep pace with the Signifer and Troubadour. If given a 100% crit rate and spamming Blessed Edge, your party will be unkillable. Even if you don't use this class, the skills it provides for the party, like Beaming Edge, which is a party-wide crit buff, is highly worth it. The final member of the top tier is Noah's starting class, the Swordfighter. The Swordfighter is incredibly versatile and works well against super bosses. On top of that, its ability to avoid aggro is unparalleled. Air Slash is the highest damaging art in Xenoblade 3, and with the Smash art and Lucky 7 spamming, the Swordfighter is absolutely top tier. It does require the support of other classes and is heavily dependent on that support in the endgame, but even so, it's a beast of a DPS. Alright, let's finish this list up with the God tier. The Incursor dishes out the most consistent and highest damage of any DPS class in Xenoblade 3. With critical damage being its main gimmick, insanely fast cooldown times, increased launch damage potential, and the lack of dependence on support from other classes, the Incursor is straight up one of the best classes in the game, period. The Troubadour is the single best healer in Xenoblade 3, and paired with the Signifer actually breaks the game. The main reason for this is Troubadour's ability to freeze buffs, making the Signifer's non-stop onslaught of buffs infinite. On top of this, the Troubadour makes art spamming a breeze. Even if you don't use the Troubadour, you absolutely will use its arts and master art. The Ogre is the breaking god of Xenoblade 3. You can make the argument that the Nopon Champion and Yumsmith can be made to be just as effective, but ultimately, common consensus is that the Ogre class breaks the game as a high damage physical class able to break even the toughest super bosses. The second best class in Xenoblade 3 is the Signifer. The Signifer is the single most broken support role in the game, with the ability to stack on dozens of buffs, then share them among the entire party. The main strategy that makes the Signifer a complete beast is the combination of Cross Impact and Resonant Flag, which gives all party members power charge. Spamming this in battle and during chain attacks will ensure immense damage. The only downside of this class is its slow battle animations, but that's still not enough to knock this class down. The final class on this list, and top of the god tier, is Soul Hacker. Soul Hacker is the blue mage of the game and has the ability to learn enemy skills. These enemy skills vary in usefulness, with skills like Dragon Decree and Toxic Gas giving constant power charge, Wild Wave and Elimination Beam boosting damage, and passives to increase your crit damage. You have the best DPS in the game. Attack, defense, and healing mastery are skills that improve as you get more soul hacking skills. Once maxed out, there is nothing the Soul Hacker can't do better than everyone else. And that's my list. If you haven't picked up Xenoblade 3 yet, I highly recommend it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to become a Patreon member for more perks. Bonus round. Top 10 coolest heroes, go! Number 10, Sagiri. Number 9, Kamaravi. Number 8, Alexandria. Number 7, Monica. Number 6, Commander Ashira. Number 5, Gray. Number 4, Masha. Number 3, Triton. Number 2, Ethel. And number 1's a spoiler, so stop the video now. It's Rex and Shulk, of course.